So I just got finished watching the first episode of the reboot of Animaniacs. You might recall I made a trailer reaction video for this show about a month or so ago now, and it finally hit. So I thought I would make a video about my initial reactions, some good, some bad. But in honor of the show, I thought I might sing a song of my reactions. So here we go. What? So I largely enjoyed the first episode, and I definitely laughed at a lot of the jokes, and I appreciated the nostalgic element. I never thought I would see Bill Clinton play the sax again like that. That was really funny. That was cool. However, I do want to outline three things that I thought were a bit concerning, to me at least. The first item has to do with a slight disagreement between me and Warner Brothers about how to define the approach of Animaniacs, the show. You might recall in my trailer reaction video, I said something along the lines of, "It was silly, but never irreverent." Thank you, me. So, if you saw the episode, you can imagine that there was a bit of a chuckle for me, a little bit of an inside joke almost, because one of the first main sort of jokes that they do after they do the Jurassic Park introduction is Yakko, Wacko, and Dot talk about not wasting their first lines back, right? These are the first lines that need to be, really powerful, impactful, funny, right? But actually, the word that Yakko uses is,
"They gotta be irreverent."
So, I still maintain that there's a major difference between being silly and irreverent. I always found the Animaniacs to be more along the lines of silly and almost never really irreverent, meaning that there's a complete sort of disregard for the feelings of others or about things that others sort of hold. I don't want to go as far as necessarily to say sacred, but hold dear to them. Now, they did have their moments through certain characters where you would make a joke at someone else's expense, of course, but the overall approach to the show I always found to be quite respectful overall to, just about everybody. Now, I would say that this reboot to me, at least through this first episode, it definitely seems like there's a conscious effort on the writers to be more irreverent. And, I think that's a decision that I wouldn't have made, but I understand that they have a certain demographic in mind, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. Now, my second point has to do with not the jokes themselves, but the anticipated reaction of their audience. Throughout this first episode, the characters take a lot of shots at the current culture of today, and that's totally understandable. They don't hold back really against anyone, which is perfectly fine by me, including themselves. I don't have a problem with the aim of the jokes. I just find their anticipation of our reactions to be a bit of a waste of time, honestly. So at the end of the first episode, Yakko, Wacko, and Dot perform what I think is a fairly forgettable song, quite honestly, about how Hollywood has become pretty lazy and just does these reboots for cash grabs. This is obviously a kind of meta joke, a self-aware joke at their own expense. And, they even mention it at the end, of course, with a big check being given to them by the Hulu cartoon executives. Essentially, Animaniacs pulls a lot of their ideas from the old Warner Brothers Looney Tunes cartoons, right? Which were also very much self-aware and embedded in the culture of the times. So it's not outrageous that they are so embedded in the culture, right? That this new reboot is doing so. My issue has to do with the addressing of the cynical audience, the cynical adult audience, an audience that largely probably wasn't going to appreciate the original show anyway, quite honestly. So, to me, I would rather just leave them be and let them foam at the mouths, whatever they're going to do. But don't change your show because of that audience. And that takes me to my final point, and to me, the most important one. You see, This show was made for me, and I didn't want it to be. The original show, of course, had an audience demographic of roughly, let's say, 10 to 15 years old, give or take, plus or minus whatever. Adults could certainly enjoy the show, right? Because there were certain jokes that could be made that would go above the head of a young, adult or a child, but an adult could sort of just kind of snicker in the corner and laugh at it. The problem is they they clearly made this show for that original audience who are now in their 30s and 40s, like myself, right? And that actually made me a bit sad. They made a very clear decision to grow the show with their audience. It's not all that unlike what J.K. Rowling did with Harry Potter, right? With each book, she sort of made the writing more complex and grew the characters with her audience. The problem is when you think about a Harry Potter book today would probably be something like Harry Potter gets his first prostate examination. You don't always need to grow your show with the audience. In this sense, I think it would have been a better choice to leave the demographic where it was and just continually have the sort of engaging, interesting, occasional adultish jokes for those of us in our, 30s and 40s to sort of just kind of chuckle at and go, hey, it's still funny. Now, as I mentioned before, I have legitimately not seen a single second of any of the other episodes, so I'm looking forward to watching the rest of them and seeing if some of these concerns that I brought up either melt away a little bit or evolve to become something else. What I'll do is I'll watch the rest of the episodes and then I'll come out with a final thoughts video here on this. And if you're interested in seeing what that's like, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and that way you'll know when that video comes out. Largely, I still laughed. I laughed my butt off, and anything that can make you laugh today, to me, is a good thing. So, let me get back to it. Let me keep watching these videos, and I'll come out with the next video as soon as I can.